This hour of HQ presented by Capital One. The AFC East now runs through Buffalo. Josh Allen and the Bills have won 2 straight division titles. They ended New England's 11-year reign, but the Patriots did return to the playoffs in Mac Jones' rookie season. Jets not as successful in Zach Wilson's rookie season, but they've added a pair of top 10 picks. And the Dolphins have added a lot to that offense to help out Tua. Here's the training camp schedule with the Bills reporting on Saturday. Dolphins, Patriots, and Jets reporting on Tuesday. And Tuesday is when most of the teams in the National Football League will all report to camp. And all camps will be underway by midweek next week. Let's get Danny Kannell and Scott Pioli in here. Scott spent more than a decade in AFC East front offices. And Scott, I want to start with you on the Patriots, who did not replace their offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels. This whole offseason, we've been trying to figure out who the offensive play caller is going to be. What is Bill Belichick doing right now with that position?
Chris, I think a lot of this is overblown, quite honestly. This has always been a group effort. Yes, Josh headed it up. Before that, it was Charlie Weiss. There have been people headed up. But the thing about the Patriots offense and the Patriots organization from a coaching standpoint, it has always been a collective. And if you look there now, having Matt Patricia in the building, having Joe Judge in the building, there's also a little-known coach by the name of Tyler Hughes who's in the building. There's one other coach that no one ever talks about who's been there since the beginning, a guy by the name of Ivan Fears. And Ivan Fears is the running backs coach. He's been the receivers coach. My relationship with Ivan goes all the way back to 1988 and 89 when we were together on the staff at Syracuse. But Ivan has been there since 1999. When we got to the Patriots, Ivan was the only holdover coach. He and Dante Scarnecchia. So for the last 20 plus years, Ivan Fears has a pulse on what's expected from the offense, how it's done, what Bill wants, what he doesn't want. So the idea of who's going to be the specific play caller right now at this moment, I get it, the training camps are starting. I think that there's too much. We're always looking for something to worry about for the Patriots. What is going to be, the one brick too many that's going to break the load? But to me, I think, trust me, Bill has a plan, and there's a lot of really, really good, talented, smart coaches there that are going to help Mac Jones.
Scott, there's no doubt with the resume that Bill Belichick has, you kind of have to trust him. But I will say this, it is an odd look to see offensive coordinator and just see vacant or, no name or just it's, multiple names there. It is weird. It's not normal. But I would say the thing that I would worry about from Mac Jones specifically is that as a rookie coming in, he had such a great rookie year and had such a good relationship with Brian Daboll. I worry about him. Does he have the same level of communication with who is the question too? Is it Matt Patricia? Is it Joe Judge? Is it somebody else on that staff that he can have the same exact line of communication, the same back and forth, the same game planning or input on game planning, if there is any with a quarterback that young in his career? So that would be my only concern and this would be really if it was any new offensive coordinator, just a new voice that you're talking to as a young quarterback, I think is imperative. And I think it's always a challenge for a quarterback to have somebody new that's going to be walking them through practice, walking them through film sessions, walking them through games and making those in-game adjustments. So I'm slightly more worried about it than you are. But if there's anything you could rely on, it's, hey, you got to trust Bill Belichick and that his method is going to work out. I also wonder if this is somewhat of a little bit of gamesmanship saying, well, I'm not going to tell you guys who's called my play yet because I don't have to. And I think it might evolve organically who becomes the more face of the offensive play calling just over time. And they'll kind of let it evolve naturally because I've been on teams that have had collaborative efforts before and it can work. So there's no reason to panic, but I'm curious to see how it pans out.
Danny, I agree with you on a couple points. There is a decision that's been made or close to made. They have an idea of who's going to be doing the play calling. So to me, Bill is simply not showing his hand. The other point that I love that you bring up is the continuity portion. Here's the one thing I will say about Mac Jones. First of all, I agree with you that continuity for some players, for many players, is a really important thing, especially with a young player. But here's the thing. Mac Jones, during his time in Alabama, lived that coaching carousel. So he's dealt with coordinator and position coach transition and turnover his entire college career. Now, I understand he didn't get to play until his senior year or his last year at Alabama, but he at least knows and has been through this whole process in terms of over preparing. So he's kind of been trained. Some of this crazy work ethic and work habits that I've seen that he has, that we've all seen that he has, is a direct byproduct of the fact that he has had to do exactly what you're talking about. So you're right, it's not an ideal situation. However, with Mac Jones, I do believe it's someone who is at least been trained to know that this can happen and prepare a little bit differently, Danny.
Well, Coach Belichick let his dog Nike make some draft picks a couple of years ago. Maybe Nike makes some offensive play calls as well. Let's move on to the favorite in the division and in the NFL, and it's the Buffalo Bills. Dan, you talked about the loss of Brian Daboll. The betting public doesn't care at this point. Do you think it's going to be that big of a deal for Josh Allen and the Bills to move on past him?
Yeah, I can't believe I screwed that up, thinking the Patriots had Daboll. Going back to maybe Mac Jones
in
Alabama. But yeah, that's right. So maybe that was where it came from. But yes, I do think it's a concern. But Ken Dorsey is a, well-respected coach who's been around for a long time. And Chris, I know you've done some pick segments with me. I usually stay away from any favorite. But on this one, I'm actually on the Bills. I feel like this team is ready to take that next step, and they were oh so close the last 2 years. And it feels like with the roster, it feels like it's ready-made for a Super Bowl. And now they're just kind of tweaking it through free agency, going to get a guy like Von Miller, going to draft a player like Kaiir Elam out of Florida, or a James Cook to kind of cushion that backfield just a little bit, add some depth there. It feels like they're going out sort of like the Rams did not that long ago, saying, we're going all in to take that next step, whatever it takes. I trust the quarterback. I trust the defense. I trust the head coach. So I think this team is ready to be in that spot as the favorites. And that is my Super Bowl pick. So I'm all in on the Buffalo Bills.
Danny, I agree with you. The expectation is they should be a great team again or a very good team again this year. I got to be careful with that word great. But, it's interesting because expectations can cut both ways. However, you mentioned the head coach, the general manager, the franchise, the culture there in Buffalo, to me, is what is so important. Because, as I mentioned, expectations can be a very dangerous thing, especially if they're coupled with either overconfidence or complacency. The key here is I don't think that the Bills have an organization or have a leadership group that gets complacent. Sean McDermott is a tremendous leader, and he's also never a guy that gets comfortable. So I have a ton of respect for him, and I really think that will infiltrate the entire locker room, everything. However, I think you'll have to be very careful. The players have to be sure that they don't start to get that disease of complacency. But again, I think the work ethic and the work habits of Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, the people that lead that organization are going to allow them to have a really good shot at reaching whatever the expectations are.
Right now, the expectation is to get to the Super Bowl and maybe this time win it in Buffalo. Scott Pioli and Danny Kannell with us here, looking at a couple of teams from the AFC East. The latest Pick Six podcast, Will Brinson has Tyler Sullivan on the program. They break down the MVP candidates in the AFC, and those candidates, according to these guys, include a couple of former MVPs, Lamar Jackson and Matt Ryan.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.